Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining on this webinar, one of our first webinars in this space in virtual reality for education, specifically higher education. Uh, so let me get quickly started. Share my screen. I'll have a small presentation through which I'll walk you through. Great. All right. Yeah, I guess I'm now sharing my screen. Uh, okay. So firstly, thank you everyone for joining in and welcome to one of our first webinars for higher education, virtual reality in higher education. The topic for today's discussion and what we will be speaking about is how we can implement virtual reality in higher education. So specifically look at key points around how we can bring virtual reality into our mainstream higher education and make it a part of the curriculum. So if we just quickly walk through the agenda, for the day, we would be firstly have a look at uh, what the overview is, what are the challenges, and how are we working on bringing in virtual reality to education. What are the key steps that are there along the way? What is the groundwork that has been done by us, and how it can help you further to integrate virtual reality as a part of your curriculum. We'll briefly touch upon our team, our brand as well, and what is the work we do. But I think the focus of the discussion will remain a lot more general and generic in terms of how we can bring in virtual reality and make it a key part of higher education. Right. So I'll first quickly walk you through what we do and about a little bit about myself as well. IXR Labs is one of the largest producers of immersive content specifically for higher education across the globe. There are a large number of players who work in school education, but we specialize specifically in higher education. In the past, we have worked with the industry as well, the likes of manufacturing setups, defense establishments, etc. But at the moment, we specialize in deploying virtual reality for higher education. Our team is a extremely diverse team, ranging from different kinds of institutes, right, from IITs, IIMs to design-oriented colleges like NID, MICA, as well as team members who have in the past worked with the top brands across the globe, the likes of Google, KPMG, Adani, even educational organization publishers like Pearson. IXR Labs is being recognized by one of the organizations that does AI-based selection of the top startups across the globe. Specifically in the field of virtual reality, we were among the top five virtual reality startups in the past year. IXR, in fact, is also one of the few startups selected by Meta for their XR startup program in the country. And we have the owners, in fact, right from Meta. Meta is in the parent organization of Facebook to educate the audience and take to the audience XR or virtual reality based initiatives to the masses. And we are working closely with them to expand our offering as well as to understand how we can influence the ecosystem to for faster adopt virtual reality and XR media. A little bit about me. I am the co-founder of IXR Labs, and in the past have worked with uh, a lot of virtual reality and immersive tech-based organizations. One of them being an education metaverse, Adverse, where I headed the innovation aspect as well. And during the course of my engagement in a lot of these organizations, I have had the chance to consult some of the top organizations across the globe, including and not limited to defense establishments like DRDO, educational institutions like National Institute of Ayurveda, and uh, publishers like Pearson, Oxford, Orient, Black Swan on how they could integrate immersive technology as a part of their offering, and also to help. expand their training and learning and development programs that are run into them. So yeah, that was about us. But I think now we'll move on to what we would cover in the webinar. Uh, we would firstly briefly cover what is virtual reality, how it can be used to enhance student engagement, and how we could deploy it in the education field with specific targets of improving critical thinking skills, promoting hands-on learning, and as a whole, improve the whole learning experience, make it a more learning experience. A few use cases or and one specific case study around how virtual reality was integrated in a classroom successfully, and certain tips and good practices on how we could go about implementing virtual reality in the classroom. Also, we would look at overcoming some of the challenges that are common challenges that teachers face. And at the end, we will be touching upon a community that we are building, a community of educators and professionals to help expand virtual reality in the field of education. I would take a little pause here and probably ask out if there are any specific questions. If you do have, you can drop them in the Q&A. You can also raise. You can also even uh, raise hands or share your reactions to certain comments, etc., that come along. And if you do have any questions, certainly drop them in the Q&A. Meanwhile, I would also be dropping in certain poll questions while we proceed, so do feel free to engage with them as well. That would give us a sense of are we going across in the right way and is it suitable for the audience or not of what we are covering. And we'll try to touch upon all the Q&As at the end. Meanwhile, you can continue dropping them. And if I do feel that certain Q&As need to be addressed along the way, we'll certainly address them as we go along. You can also raise hands to ask questions in between, so that could have a further conversation on any question that is there. Right. Great. So I think I'll start off with a poll itself. If in your poll sections you'll see the poll, and it's around if you have experienced virtual reality or not. I'll just wait for a few seconds while people vote on it. I see a large percentage of the audience has experienced virtual reality. Uh, has anyone experienced virtual reality for education? Has anyone used it as a part of education? Again, I have put up a poll. Right. Again, a seemingly large part of the audience has not experienced virtual reality for education. Great. So I think that's what that is one of the challenges that we are trying to address is virtual reality as a part of education because globally virtual reality is proven to be an amazing educational tool. And I think if we look at our own history and where we came from, we used to work with the industrial setups, and we realized that the largest applications for virtual reality were in training, learning, and development. And it was graduate engineering trainees that at the end of the day were getting trained on virtual reality in those setups. And hence we thought that if it's such a huge use case for learning, colleges are missing out by not making it a part of their curriculum. And that's where we have set off on our endeavor to make it a part of everyday classroom learning and bring it to the masses by certain initiatives that we have taken along the way, which I will cover and touch upon as we proceed along. Great. So I think firstly we'll just touch upon what is the meaning of virtual reality and what are the kinds of different technologies that revolve around what we refer to as XR or extended reality. We would have heard of augmented reality, mixed reality, and virtual reality. Augmented reality is, well, quickly move through the definitions and then probably talk about certain examples as well. Augmented reality is where you superimpose upon a physical world. So it's what you see through your phone filters, where you see overlays over the existing environment. Now, these overlays cannot interact with physical objects in the environment or cannot use the physical environment as uh, an interactive or an immersive feature of the environment itself. That's where, on the other hand, your virtual reality, where it's a whole immersive experience, it has no connect with the existing or the physical environment around you, as it just clearly shuts off that whole environment. It transports you to a totally different environment. And in the confluence of both lies mixed reality, where you have a virtual environment which interacts with your existing physical environment. So it would, let's say, interact. The walls of your room would become the walls of environment that you are experiencing in mixed reality. Let's say if you are, driving a car, or if you are even sitting in your own environment, the chair, the physical actual chair that you use in your environment would be a part of your mixed reality experience. So it could probably look like a different chair that you're sitting on, but it would be in place of the actual chair that you are sitting on. Your table or desk could be replicated in the virtual environment. If we look at certain use cases or a few scenarios of how it goes about, augmented reality is where, let's say, you scan, in the use case that we are discussing or the scenario that we are discussing, you scan an image of a rocket, you see the 3D model of a rocket all over that image. You are able to rotate it, you are able to see how it flies, you are able to interact with it, but the rocket cannot interact with the environment. In mixed reality, you would see the rocket flying around, it would move around your environment, it would probably bounce off the walls, it would go below a chair, go around lights or plants in the environment. So it is interacting with the environment that is there. And in virtual reality, you would be transported to a different space environment where you won't see your existing environment, but your the whole rocket and the uh, environment that the virtual environment would be interacting with each other, and you in turn would get to interact with them. So while I briefly touched upon what these technologies do, there are certain key benefits of these technologies, specifically of VR is something that we'll cover, which helps it make an extremely great use case for education. And why do we need to pick on these technologies and make them as a part of the whole learning pedagogy is something that we'll touch upon as well. So yeah, the existing pedagogy is quite non-experiential. It's non-interactive at the moment. Yes, there is an interaction between the professor, the educator, and the student, but there is limited interaction with the student and between the student and the subject matter itself. If we look at how the classrooms have changed or how have they evolved over the past 200 years since the first universities were set up, they still run on a chalkboard or a blackboard led teaching pedagogy till this date. Having seen that how fast the whole industry has evolved, and if you look at the industry is the industry or the industrial setups are moving further from a blackboard or a classroom based education system to a more technology driven education system for their internal learning and development programs. That's where we feel that educational setups or educational institutes probably need to pick up on a lot of the good practices that are there out in the market, which would help students become more employable. So, coming to what the nature is of virtual reality, I think one of the first things that we look at and we see once we think about virtual reality is it's immersive. Once you are in that environment and you are immersed in that environment, you are cut out from the outside distractions, you are cut out from the outside environment. That ensures that you have nothing but the subject matter to focus upon. It's interactive. You can interact with objects in the virtual environment. You can pick up things. You can conduct experiments. You can run simulations. That allows you to be a lot more hands-on in what you do. So it brings in the aspect of hands-on learning. It's experiential, as you experience not only visually, but there is sound, there is sight, and there is haptic feedback that is involved. So you experience the whole activity that you do, which which increases its utilization as an experiential learning medium. A few other things that get added onto it is you can make virtual reality a lot more intelligent, as in you can let the environment react in ways that it would do in real life, as in you can build in physics, which allows you to bring in intelligence. Insightful is certainly something that we as educators would have to contribute to virtual reality, but the whole immersive experience brings in a lot of insights to the students itself. So if a student is, let's say, on extraplanetary surface, they would be drawing in insights of uh, how the environment there feels, how what is the light conditions that are there, what are the environmental conditions that are there. Or let's say if you transport a student to a factory shop floor, it would be extremely insightful for them on how a factory shop floor looks like, what is it to be on a factory shop floor, how material is moved on a factory shop floor. So there are a lot of small cues that students keep picking up, and it's certainly interesting as it's probably not not a medium which is black and white, and not a medium that is one dimensional one way, which makes it a lot more interesting for students. So students, by the nature of virtual reality and by students nature, they end up wanting to learn more through virtual reality. They spend a lot more, they're willing to spend a lot more time with the subject matter, and they probably develop a lot more affinity towards the subject matter, which is hard to develop with thick, bulky books that are black and white in their nature. So yeah, if we look at what kind of applications are there in specifically in education, these are a few specific use cases that I will talk about. You have virtual field trips being one of the primary applications in education. Taking students on field trips is a expensive and quite a difficult activity. Me being a mechanical engineer, and in my career as an engineering student, I visited a couple of good industrial visits, only a couple of good industrial visits during those 4 years of engineering. But I feel as an engineering student, I would have learned a lot more if I had the opportunity to spend a lot more time in the field. That's where virtual reality helps a lot. It helps educators bring in experiences that are that can't be replicated in a classroom to the students. Science and engineering simulations is something that can be run through virtual reality again. We usually run these simulations on custom simulators like MATLAB, or you have certain specific simulators for certain things. A lot of this data and data input can be integrated with virtual reality, which allows you to simulate environments, simulate activities for the students. So it not only makes the simulations less boring, because if you just look at a 2D interface and work on simulations, it is just data that you're looking at. But here the students can experience the simulation themselves. They can understand if they change certain aspects, how it changes the output. Uh, a lot of the other educational avenues that are there, like language learning, soft skill trainings, and special education, is something that can be done through virtual reality. Fostering creativity and design is something that is a great plus point for virtual reality, as you are able to allow students to be creative in the kinds of experiments that they run without facing any consequences of things going wrong. They can be exposed to a lot more different designs in a much more immersive way. And if we look at on the social sciences aspect, there is history, art, geography is another great application for education. And finally, training and professional development, providing students with the opportunity to actually do virtual internships, work on industrial setups, work on certain actual industrial use cases through virtual reality, enables them to actually get a lot more hands-on work experience even before they head out to any factory shop floor. And what are the benefits? I mean, there are hard numbers to back these benefits, and this has been obtained from research. A lot of the research is done by colleges and universities that are actually implementing these uh, technologies as a part of their pedagogy, and as well as organizations, industrial organizations like PwC and Samsung, who uh, who supply the content and hardware often to educational setups as well. So something that is noted is 75% faster training. So you, in fact, would be doing training in almost one fourth the time, and that is great because it saves a lot for. In fact, for this is a great benefit for industrial setups because it saves a lot on their learning and development cost. But for colleges as well, it would ensure that you would be moving through the subject matter or getting through the subject matter a lot more faster. Students have a greater emotional connect with the subject matter, and I think this is one of the key benefits that we need to look at, as oftentimes students start hating certain subject matter because they develop a disconnect with uh, how the theoretical and the practical go along. Specifically, if I talk about how what one of the use cases that we have seen in mechanical engineering, thermodynamics, for example, is a great subject for this case. Students hate thermodynamics because it's extremely theoretical, hard to understand, and hard to visualize at times. But it's one of the key subjects that is applied in a mechanical engineer's career. So, whether be it car engines, aircraft engines, air conditioning, cooling systems, power generation, thermodynamics becomes the core of the subject. But it's hard to visualize thermodynamics. That's where you have virtual reality helping in. And something that we have seen from our deployments with colleges is that students who use virtual reality to learn even simple concepts of thermodynamics are, when they proceed to learn more complex concepts of thermodynamics, even through conventional methods, they are more affectionate or they have greater emotional connect with the subject matter. There is greater concentration. Now this comes as a nature of the 75% greater concentration. This comes as a nature of the technology. Student, once they strap on a VR headset, they can't ignore the content running in front of them. They can't be distracted, so it certainly drives greater concentration. Something that is a great, the other metric that is great is the improvement in confidence. Students are a lot more confident with the experience they've had in virtual reality. So this 20 to 75% comes from a study that was done on surgeons who practiced a surgery through virtual reality before performing it in real life. So when they perform that surgery in virtual reality and before they move on to performing it in real life, they were a lot more confident about doing a successful surgery as against when they were probably not practicing it through virtual reality. And again, as a nature of virtual reality, you can run the iterations multiple times without any risks, without any challenges, and in fact, without any additional costs. So further helping you enhance your understanding and improve confidence. So again, another research that Samsung had done. Uh, Professors or educators feel that yes, student VR is needs to be a part of the course curriculum, and in fact, 92% of the educators who have been interviewed and who have been uh, studied in this study feel that they would support the use of these technologies in the classroom. In fact, one of the key insights is that 79% think VR enables experiences that would not be otherwise possible. And that is, I think, one of the key benefits of this technology. that you can bring to students that experiences that would otherwise not be possible. I'll come to this slide in a bit, but this is also a great benefit for institutions and educators. Uh, there are great benefits on NEC and NBA side, or let's say ranking sides as well, for educators that can be drawn, or colleges that can be drawn by the use of virtual reality. Uh, Yes, so I think we'll look at some of the use cases where virtual reality has been used by colleges. We'll start off with Stanford. I think probably one of the benchmark colleges globally for anything when it comes to tech. So they run what they call a virtual human interaction lab that and is studying how what are the benefits of running using virtual reality in education. So they have deployed virtual reality as a part of their courses where they need to conduct a certain part of their courses through virtual reality, and they are studying what the benefits are. And in fact, some of the numbers that we had put out earlier are from studies run by Stanford itself. University of Maryland and University of Oxford are two universities globally. In fact, there are many more, but these are a couple of universities that are using virtual reality to train medical students on surgeries and how they could diagnose illnesses in a safe and realistic environment. This allows students to practice on medical procedures, practice surgical procedures without risking anyone's life. The UCLA is using virtual reality for teaching for immersive science simulations for your Bachelor of Science students or Masters of Science students to explain science concepts in a very engaging and an interactive way. And if you look at a lot of other colleges are doing it for engineering. A lot of them focuses on manufacturing processes, power systems, again, industrial tools, etc., which cater to these domains that allow universities to bring to students experiences that can't be done in a class. Yeah. I will wait for a bit if there are any questions at this point of time. If there are not, we can. Great. I guess we don't have any questions at the moment, but moving on, we'll look at one of the use cases that we where we have deployed a lab, and this is actually a quite an interesting case study. We deployed a lab at a government college in Bikaner called Government Dungar College, Bikaner. Uh, Now this college is over 100 years old, and it was one of the first virtual reality labs that we deployed, and we focused on science experience, BSc, MSc experiments that were done through virtual reality. The virtual reality lab, in fact, is the most prestigious facility in that college, and in fact, in the whole region of Bikaner. So, what did happen was that it became extremely popular with the not just within the college but outside the college as well, because it was something that people had not seen before. So, people were visiting the lab. Even non-students or people outside the college were visiting the lab to experience virtual reality. But if you look at what were the results at the college level, in the past 2 years of being deployed, over 3,000 students have been trained through virtual reality, and this is across courses with zoology, chemistry, physics, and botany. And students, over 3,000 students in the past couple of years have been trained on virtual reality. The lab has done 15 teacher training programs. In fact, some of the programs were with in collaboration with the government as well, but a lot of the programs were for internal educators, where they have trained over 200 teachers on using virtual reality for education. As an outcome of this, they have published 11 research papers on use of virtual reality and augmented reality in specific fields of let's say botany, zoology, chemistry, and physics, and a lot from the research that was done in this lab. What they did great was that each student is made to visit the lab during their course, uh, as a part of their graded activities. So students need to visit a lab for a certain number of hours, depending on the subjects that they take up, and ensure that those experiments in virtual reality are performed. So at the start of the term, teachers roll out their teaching plan and mark out what are the courses that would be done through virtual reality, and those students then perform those experiments in the lab itself. And each of the professors and multiple students are trained to conduct VR sessions itself, which ensures that they can train their peer set as well on using virtual reality. So the college ensures that each and every student learns through virtual reality. The benefits being that they save a lot on the time required to uh, set up the experiments that are done. So experiments like titration experiments, like chromatography experiments, like photometry, etc. They take a lot of setup time. This setup time is zero in virtual reality, as the experiment is already developed in virtual reality. You can just wear the headset and start performing. Students can run the sessions multiple times. There is no restriction on the times the students can perform the experiment, and this comes at no additional cost. So there is no additional cost of running it again and again and again, which is something that is not possible in a real lab, as you need to, as there is material cost involved, there is cost of handling the equipment, all of those costs get added on. In fact, students perform the experiments much faster in virtual reality. In real life, the whole experiment, each experiment can take close to 2 to 3 hours. In VR, these experiments can be performed much faster, as a lot of the waiting time or the time required to move between and get equipment, etc., is almost negligible in this case. And something as an outcome that has been noted further, and not noted just by us but also by a lot of the research papers that have come out, and the prominent visitors who have visited the lab, is that a lot of the students who are from rural backgrounds, as Bikaner is a semi-rural setting for the lab, uh, they get exposure to some of the state-of-the-art learning content. So the kind of labs that we have, and we'll see a few videos as we proceed ahead, but some of the labs that are there, they are cutting edge and futuristic labs. So that allows students to be exposed to some of the state-of-the-art settings that they would potentially be working in. So if these students, let's say from chemistry background, join top chemical organizations, then they would be working in some of the most state of the art labs that are there. But in real life, they would probably have just experienced something very toned down in their college. But through virtual reality, we can close the gap and ensure that students get an exposure to state of the art learning. Now, what are the challenges in adopting VR, and how are we addressing, and how can these challenges be addressed, is something that we'll look at. Uh, Cost is a certain challenge that is there. The technology is new and can be expensive, but at scale, the cost of the technology and the software can come down extremely to low. Can be done at a very low cost. In fact, some of the labs that we run at scale, when they run at scale of 500 to 1,000 students, the costs end up being as low as between as low as 5,000 per student per year. So it's at scale they become extremely efficient, and a research study has shown that if you run a lab for more than 350 or 400 students, it's as good as any other technology interventions that are run. There would be limited access to the technology, as the technology is new, the equipment is limited, there can be limited access, which is where you need a certain teaching plan to be created, or usage plan to be created, which ensures that all students are taking benefit of the labs that are set up. Technical issues are there in the technology that is there in the market, but a lot of the software and the kind of integration that we do or any other setup does ensures that these technical challenges are at a minimum. But setting up and by your own, a lot of the technology can be difficult. Teacher training is something that is required, and something that we have seen from experiences that if teachers are not well trained to use VR, it can be a challenge to integrate them into the classroom, and which is where probably this is one of the sessions where we are probably introducing teachers to virtual reality and the technology around it. Uh, but we do extensive teacher training programs, and as many teachers as they get trained, this would become a negligible challenge. So if you look at the past, where probably the first time computers came to colleges, teachers were not trained to use those computers. But as teachers got more proficient with the computers, they were making better and better use of it in their course curriculum. And the one of the foremost challenges, there is very little content developed for in VR for education per se. A lot of the content is entertainment and is entertainment focused, entertainment and gaming focused at the moment. But we are one of the organizations that is building content for education, and I think as the community grow, as we further build upon the community that we are working with, there would be a lot more content available. So there could be channels similar to YouTube in the current state, which has a lot of VR content that is there that could be used for educational purposes. Uh, so how does one go about integrating virtual reality in the curriculum? So first thing that we do is identify the learning objectives. We identify which are the learning objectives that can be uh, worked upon through VR. Not all learning objectives can be achieved through VR. So it is very critical to understand which are the ones that can be tackled through VR. When we develop our in-house content as well, or when we work with colleges ourselves, this is the first thing that we do. We identify what are the things that should be done through VR, what are the things that should not be done through VR, and work on the things that can be done through VR. Choosing the right content format is something that is necessary. For example, where do you use a industrial tool? Where do you use a let's say a experiment, or where do you use something like the small interactivity or a game? That becomes a key part. So choosing the right VR content which aligns with the objectives becomes a key part of integrating VR into the curriculum. And then you would have to build lesson plans. I think that becomes a key part. If the educator is not aware of when VR has to be brought in, it can fall flat. We need to ensure that you have identified which are the classes or which is the session when you would incorporate VR into your lesson plan. You would then want to ensure that you would need to ensure that the technology is accessible to students. Now, there are different modes in which the technology can be made accessible, and that is something that I'll cover in the slide ahead. uh, you and then finally you need to evaluate and continuously evaluate if the learning outcomes are being met or not, and that is something that we do with strong analytics. But even through simple integrations, you would want to run some tests on students after they're viewed through VR to understand if they are understanding the topic through VR or not. That helps you gain feedback and collect feedback and improve the content and improve the way you deliver lessons through VR. So yeah, so there are three primary modes through which we recommend higher education to use VR. Uh, First thing that we refer to is called a VR corner in a library, where it's like it's just set up in the library or in a separate setup, but students access it like they would access a library at their will, at their leisure. They would experience content through VR. So here, what professors can do is professors can recommend certain VR content that they identified the previous step, and deliver it to the professor, deliver and ensure that the students experience it in the library. So it's like recommending a book to the students, that you read a certain reference book, or you can say that okay, you read a certain or you experience a certain reference material through VR. Then there could be a VR lab mode, which is where you set up a virtual reality lab, and this is the most effective mode, I would say, and probably the most common popular mode among colleges, is where they set up a VR lab. So they would have 25, 30, 50 odd devices, VR devices in a lab, and students come in batches and experience VR. It is like running any other lab. So you would have a computer science lab or a computer lab. You come in, you experience, conduct the or perform the experiments in on that computer, and then you basically move on from there. So that's how the VR lab board works. Students come in, perform experiments through VR, and then they proceed on to their subsequent classes. So there you integrate it as a part of the practical sessions or the hands-on sessions that are involved. Thirdly, there is in-classroom usage, where the professor brings in a VR headset as a part of their classroom usage and uses it to explain concepts. So usually, in-classroom usage is something that is also popular from educators, but there are certain limitations of not being able to engage a whole class at once, as the number of headsets required would go up in that case. Here, the professor, the educator, wears the headset or asks a student to wear a headset and uses the whole 3D immersive experience environment cast on a screen to ensure that they are able to showcase certain things in 3D and explain concepts better. So that these are the three modes in which higher education institutes use VR or deploy VR as a part of their course curriculum. The most popular one and the most effective one being a VR lab mode, and that's the lab mode in which we usually deploy our offerings the most. So to get started off, there are number of headsets out in the market at this day and age. Uh, a couple of prominent players are HTC and HTC Vive are a couple of prominent players, and Oculus or Meta is another prominent player out in the market. There is also Pico, which is another prominent player in the market. But the Oculus Quest 2, or now the Meta Quest 2, is the most popular device out in the market. It's probably the most accessible and cost-effective device as well. And we or the global community largely deploys content prominently through the Oculus Quest 2 devices. In fact, it has its own library as well, where you can access free content. uh, a lot of the content is entertainment oriented. Very little education oriented content is available on the stores. That's something that we as an organization are working to address. But if you look at the hardware and the technology, Oculus Quest 2 or Meta Quest 2 is the most popular device and the most cost effective device as well out in the market. So in fact, to get started, you could just buy a VR headset off the shelf. Or Amazon, etc., sell a lot of these headsets, and you can start experiencing a lot of the content that is there available, and use it as a part of a small experience for students in the classroom. Right. So moving on to the slide that I skipped, the NEC and NBA accreditation that allows you to that can be done through VR. So there are 110 points out of 1,000 points that are available for NAC and NBA ratings that can be availed that can be directly contributed through VR. So we have identified which are the kind of which are the markers or criterias that can be fulfilled through VR, but directly 110 points can be impacted through implementation of virtual reality or XR technology by itself. So I'll take another small pause if there are any questions at this point. Great, all right. No questions at this point. I'll continue with the presentation. Right. Moving on to what we do. We deploy virtual reality to educational institutes, and these are some of the educational institutes where we have deployed virtual reality. IIT Kharagpur is one of the top educational institutes in the country where we have deployed our labs. National Institute of Ayurveda is somewhere where we have deployed a medical VR lab. There are many more organizations. There are many more educational organizations where we have set up VR labs for different domains, which is BSc, MSc, medical, and engineering per se. Right. Yeah. So what do our modules contain, and what is our content that is there, and how does this align with what I was talking about? We have different kinds of modules which cover concepts, which allow industrial experiences, and which allow students to run hands-on experiments. So here, for example, you can run hands-on experiments on material sciences. You can run industrial tours of oil refineries, AC plants, thermal power plants, or you can experience complex equipment like jet engines, boilers, turbines, etc. For medical, you have the whole human anatomy, medical subsystems that are visible. And for science graduate courses, you have things like experiments that can be performed through VR. While that is our commercial activity that we do, we are now building a community for VR in education. Uh, it is basically a community of educators to help not just us, but organizations across the globe and country to understand what are the challenges that educators face in deploying VR and share with them best practices, tips for using VR in the classroom. There are a lot of proposals and projects that come up, which are opportunities for educators to take up. So we, let's say, work with uh, likes of defense projects which come up. There are projects which come up by research organizations like ISRO, or you would have projects which come up by organizations like manufacturing setups like BHEL, etc., medical setups. A lot of the time, you would need an educator community to help us build the product up. At the same time, there are a lot of projects that come to educators as a potential to take up in virtual reality itself, and that's where the community would allow collaborations between the educators and the industry per se. We would be running research papers. In fact, like with one of the organizations, which is IIT Kharagpur, we are funding a research on virtual reality and how it can be deployed in education. So there are a lot of such research that can be taken up, and we would be looking to build the community up to foster these research opportunities in this field. If we look globally, VR and XR and immersive technology is one of the fastest growing fields at this day and age. In fact, if we talk about the job opportunities that are there, large organizations like Meta, Apple, Google have moved a lot of their funds into two domains. One of them being XR and immersive technology, and the other being artificial intelligence. Now, these two domains are the ones where the most job opportunities are at this day and age. So there are opportunities for live projects, internships that could be put out through this community. And yes, we would continue to organize events, webinars, workshops to promote VR in education and provide basically an opportunity to educators to develop their professional experience and network in this field. So yeah, this is some of the things that we are doing. We would be soon launching a course for educators on virtual reality and how to integrate it in their curriculum. We are curating trainings for the management of colleges and students, uh, and not just students, but also educators on creating pedagogies which are based on virtual reality. We are training learners across the country to better understand XR technology. And in fact, we have developed our own pedagogies and implementation strategies. This is something that we would continue to share through the community and through such webinars on how you can implement and build pedagogies around virtual reality. Rest, there are certain challenges on the management and administration front, which are open research areas or potentially open areas where we would want to understand how and what would be feasible for colleges to and how they can better implement these technologies, which is where again the whole ecosystem grows and gets built up, and the community as well grows to ensure that these challenges can be tackled and we can contribute fruitfully to any educational institute or anyone looking to deploy virtual reality labs is a part of their offering. Right. These are a few links that I would share in the chat as well. This would help you stay in touch with us and probably connect with us further if there are any queries, doubts, etc. And this is where we continue to share a lot of our resource material. We do put up a lot of the material that we uh, publish out on these communities. So you will receive these links through the email through an email as well. Post the have any questions, or if there are any questions, would be great to address those questions. Get be dropped in the Q&A, and I would be happy to take them, or you could just raise your hand. That would allow me to unmute you and probably allow you to ask the question as well. Great. There is one last poll that I would run is, would you consider using virtual reality as a tool for education? And if so, please do drop in any comments on how you would, how can we access it. So I have one question that has come in on how can we access the VLabs created at your portal. Yeah. So this is from Shafalika. So our virtual labs or our virtual reality content is accessed through the Oculus Quest 2 headset. That's where you access it. So we could share with you an application that allows you to access virtual reality content. That would give you an experience on how VR can be uh, useful. So certainly, I think post this call will share with you certain links that you can explore, and that would probably help you understand on how they can be used. Rest the VR content that is there. This would be certain demos, so you wouldn't require Oculus Quest 2 headset at your end to uh, utilize the content. Any other query? Great. I think Shafalika does have a VR Oculus headset as well, so it would be great to share our content with you to understand better. Great. I guess we have a couple of minutes in case there are further queries. Great. So I guess that's all. That's all the queries that we had We'll keep you posted. Do join in on the community. We'll share the links with you over mail. So do join in on the community to stay in touch with further activities that we do take up as we proceed ahead. Great. All right. That's thank you for joining in. Hope to see you again on